Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Legendarium podcast. This is episode, I believe it's 351. We are finishing the Quenta Silmarillion today. Not the entire book, but this section of the book. Today's, I think, is chapters 22 through 24 of the Quenta Silmarillion. So welcome. Glad to have you here. I am Craig, your host. And over there, if I could, I should say he's my shining star, right? But in that I would cast him into the stars forever. It's just, you can come back and fight my battles for me, but
got it.
Yeah, just don't want you there on a constant basis. It's Ryan Bruckman.
I twinkle a lot. So.
I know, and I'm sitting next to you, so thank you.
And if he dropped his girdle, he'd get invaded post-haste. It's Kyle Lemon.
I don't know why you're always trying to get into my girdle. Stay out.
Something when I see you, Kyle, when I look at your face, all I can see is the word girdle.
Girdle?
Yeah. What a horrible word. Does that not just, it's not a lovely word.
A blood-girdling screams.
So anyway, today we're talking about the Fall of Gondolin. We're talking, or not the book, just the event, the Fall of Gondolin, the Fall of Doriath, or I guess it's called the Ruin of Doriath. We're talking about Eärendil and the new Morning Star, all that kind of stuff. So that is what we're going over. I have not written a full recap of this one, just because I kind of figured I did 5 or 6 of those as we've made these episodes. And as I went through, I was like, this is pointless. If anybody's listening to this, they've read these chapters and, it's only a little bit. So
you presume too much. You think that we've read these chapters.
I know that Ryan has, because Ryan showed up and said, wait a minute, I thought it was just 22 and 23. So Kyle and I chatted while Ryan read chapter 24. So
yep.
That being
he was
said,
playing Snake, though.
I just held out long enough.
He pulled out his old Nokia brick phone and he was playing Snake the whole time we were talking.
Just long enough to trick us into thinking he'd read it.
Yeah.
I told you it was weird that my Nokia had a Kindle app on it.
All right, before we get to any of that stuff, thelegendarium.com is where you can go check out not full show notes. I'm sorry, wrong show. I host multiple shows and sometimes I get mixed up. Thelegendarium.com is where you can go to get the Patreon link, to get the Discord link, and to find episodes sorted by subject, normally by author. But you can also get our author shelf series all grouped together. The way I envision this working is that, most people aren't actually listening to the episodes on our website, although they are there. You can press the play button and listen to them there. So if you want to do that, that's fine. But at the very least, you can check on the episode numbers. And so if you're wondering where to find, the rest of the Dune episodes, or where's your Patrick Rothfuss stuff or whatever, you can find the episode number and then listen to it on whatever podcatcher you so choose.
My go-to is usually like, did these idiots talk about this guy? And then I can find it.
Yeah, exactly.
So if that's in your mind, we probably did.
That's actually the text we wrote at the top of the webpage. This is what the idiots have talked about.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, Ryan, now that you have read all 3 chapters,
yes.
How did it go? What has been your impression of finishing up this part of the tale?
The most interesting thing for me in these final 3 chapters, finishing up, was actually feeling the closure of the arc. Like we see the kind of the rise of the Elven, and this is kind of the fall. Like it's not that they're all gone or anything. Like, right. Clearly deal with it, but the end of the glory days. Finishing these out, the battle of the War of Wrath.
Yeah,
kind of we closed out. So and looking back over what we've already read, going, oh yeah, I see a full story arc here. I see a full tale that's been told. In the past, as we've done this, partially because of the way we've done this, it's been a lot of individual story pieces. Like, oh, this is a cool story piece. This is a cool story piece. But I, for the first time, feel like I have the full tale of the elves of Middle Earth, at least, along with a few other heroes who've kind of come in. And so it's certainly not the happiest ending.
You might say that.
But it's also like there's also still the good guys are able to finally get Morgoth sort of taken care of.
Let's talk about that, because I'm always struck when I reach this section, especially as we get to the end, Okay, I'll give a little recap. The Noldor are just in shambles, right? After the anybody remember the name of the fifth battle? Nirnaeth Arnoediad? No, am I the only one who memorized that?
Yep.
Okay. No, I'm just kidding. Of course he didn't. Why would you? He asked himself rhetorically. After that battle, the Noldor are in shambles. The seven sons of Fëanor are scattered or killed in some cases. By the time we get to the end of this story, or the end of these chapters, in chapter 24, there's only two of them left. There's Maedhros and Maglor are the only ones left. Everybody else is killed. Gondolin is no more. It's been completely razed to the ground. Doriath has been sacked. Nargothrond has been sacked. Everything is gone, right? And then at the end of the story, like you say, Ryan, the good guys prevail. And if this were another book, if this were the type of book we normally read, right, with an arc and a protagonist and, like the civilizational clash that we often see in these fantasy stories, then it would be supremely annoying that the gods are like, all right, hey, they roll their eyes and say, all right, Vanyar, you're up, sluggers. Go pack it up. The Teleri will ship you over, and you just go, just pound Morgoth into the ground.
Yeah.
Just destroy that guy. And, it's almost like it's nothing, right? It's not, of course, but the speed with which we go through that in the narrative is compared to a normal, quote unquote, normal novel would be immensely unsatisfying.
Yeah.
And yet, this is not a normal novel.
It would be like if Endgame was a 2-minute short.
Right. Something like, except that, part of my point is that we've been following the heroes of Endgame through the whole MCU, and this is like a 20 movie arc coming to a close, and they all get their shining moment. And in this one, it's like, you've all died or betrayed your oaths or betrayed your friends or, lusted after the Silmarils, and no, you're all dead. And now God has to come clean up your mess. Thanks a pantload, Chet.
Yeah.
What was that from? Wayne's World. That's what that is. I can never remember all my references. Anyway, Kyle, what do you think of all that? Like, did this feel anticlimactic or unsatisfying, or did it feel like, oh man, what a closure to an arc that I've been reading?
I don't know that I felt like it was even closure to an arc, to be honest, because I just kind of was going with the flow of events. To be honest, I didn't connect it like Ryan did, where it's like, oh, here's the whole story of the elves. It was just a continuation for me.
Yeah.
Because for me, it just feels like there's still going to be a continuation. You know what I mean? Like this is just the next checkpoint. Which I guess, as you put it that way, there's definitely an arc there, but I didn't put that together as I was reading it. It was more like, okay, so now here's what happened to Húrin, and here's what happened to, Doriath and Nargothrond and all, how that all went down. But I didn't put together the arc thing. For me, it's a continuation or a continuum, I should say.
Yeah.
So,
and it's we definitely get in the book, there's a nice little epigraph, I guess, at the end that's like, and thus it was, whatever, blah blah blah, for a paragraph. But we're going to, as we go into Akallabêth, you'll see that, okay, we do have some characters that we were just reading about, and it kind of carries us into the Second Age. Then we'll get to the end of Akallabêth, and there will be characters in there that carry us through into the Third Age. And it all, kudos to Christopher Tolkien and Guy Gabriel Kay, mostly Christopher, I'm sure, for crafting that, for making this feel like, I'm just continuing with the story, because that's one of the points of this, is that it's all part of one big story, right? This is all, especially when we're talking about elven houses and the Elros and Elrond and the Half Elven and how did I say Half? The Half Elven.
The L is there.
Anyway, but it all feels very connected and mildly incestuous at times. Aragorn and Arwen being first cousins 37 times removed or something like that. Anyway, But I mean, that's, I guess I'm straying a little bit. But yeah, part of the point of it is this is all connected. So yeah, of course it should feel that way. So that's good that it does. I do want to bring up, this is going to be, by the way, a very patron heavy episode. We've got a lot of patron questions. We're going to be digging into a lot of those. I think that'll make up the bulk of what we're doing here today. But I do want to bring up one of my favorite moments from the entire Silmarillion, and that is the final paragraph, not the epigraph, but the final paragraph in this section in chapter 24, when the Vanyar have come and defeated Morgoth, and everything's getting wrapped up at the end of this chapter. And we get this paragraph. But Morgoth himself, the Valar, thrust through the door of night beyond the walls of the world into the timeless void. And a guard is set forever on those walls, and Eärendil keeps watch upon the ramparts of the sky. Yet the lies that Melkor, the mighty and accursed, Morgoth Bauglir, the power of terror and of hate, sowed in the hearts of elves and men, are a seed that does not die and cannot be destroyed, and ever and anon it sprouts anew and will bear dark fruit even unto the latest days. Love that. It's a really good distillation of one thing that Tolkien that he comes back to again and again. For anybody who complains about how long the end of Return of the King is, yeah, I'm not talking about the movies. You know, people can complain about that, whatever. I don't care. But in the books, we got the Scouring of the Shire, and part of his point with the Scouring of the Shire is, congratulations, you've won. The day is saved. But that doesn't mean that evil is gone. It requires constant vigilance. Who's the character that says constant vigilance? What am I thinking of? Constant vigilance. No? Okay. Again, I can't remember.
It's ringing a bell, but I don't know what it is.
All my own references. Yeah, somebody on Discord will tell us. No doubt. But yeah, he says the lies that Melkor sowed in the hearts of elves and men are a seed that does not die and cannot be destroyed. And it's a very this is Tolkien to a T. This is very small c conservative, okay, Catholic. That part of Tolkien that's like, no, that is human nature. We are fallen. You know, he believes in original sin, and this is human nature. This is the way we are. You know, in this story, it's because of the lies of Melkor, right? But it fits really neatly with his real life worldview, his religious worldview. It's a really great distillation from him. So anyway, is there anything that you guys wanted to bring up as highlights before we dig into the listener questions that will no doubt take us through a lot of the story without recapping it chronologically?
I know this is a little bit of a retread of a prior point, but there was a fantastic example in this. I believe it's the Fall of
Gondolin.
Gondolin.
I'm sure it's Gondolin or Gondolin.
If just I don't know if to call it mastery or schizophrenia or whatever, of deciding when details matter and when they don't. It's been a constant theme throughout the whole book. Like we even just now we mentioned, you know, this huge epic final battle of the Vanyar coming through is like, it just kind of happens. There's not a lot of information there.
Right.
But earlier on, there's a sequence, and I don't remember who it is, that he actually describes, and the body was thrown down and hit thrice upon the rocks
right,
and falls into the fire. I'm like, okay, so we had to know exactly how many times that hits the rocks.
Right.
But then we go and we talk about the host of Morgoth coming over as a red sun over the northern slopes of the mountain coming down, and it's all this host of Balrogs and dragons. And I was just like, I remember no major details here, just a host of bad guys coming over the top.
Mm-hmm.
But what was important in that sequence was that there was a festival going on, that everyone was celebrating the fact that the sun was about to rise for the summer, and then we do the whole red sun rising on the opposite side coming out. There was just a whole bunch of things. I'm like, that is whenever he does the host sings, there's no details, your mind fills it in, it's masterful. And then when he does the individual moments where it's like, and the body bounced 3 times, it's like, yeah, I needed to know that. And it's also fantastic. So I don't know how he lands it, or if it's just because of the feeling that it was just a moment that stood out to me on this read.
Sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. There is, so we've talked already about Beren and Luthien and how there is a companion book that goes along with it, and you can read portions of the epic poem that he was composing about Beren and Luthien. And the book is essentially a distillation of the notes that you get in A History of Middle-earth that takes you through how this story came to be, et cetera, et cetera. We get the same thing with Túrin. I think it's called The Children of Húrin, the standalone volume. There is a volume called The Fall of Gondolin as well. And the reason there is one of those is because it was kind of the next story that he had in his mind to really flesh out in the way that he was doing with Beren and Túrin.
Okay.
And so I think as opposed to some of the other stuff earlier in the book, this story, he did have some of those little teeny details in his mind. Yes, it bounced thrice off the rocks and fell into the fire. So he has this in his mind because, I don't know, he wrote some dope passage in the poem. And he's like, that's going in everywhere, right? And then, he didn't get as far along with that one as he had with the other two. And so this chapter in the book, I think, feels a little more sparse because of that, because there wasn't the same kind of detail to draw on from his notes. But what we got it's certainly interesting. But yeah, no, I think you're right on with feeling a little bit, what'd you call it? Not schizophrenic, but uneven. Yeah. It's uneven at least.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Kyle, anything you want to bring up?
I think what stood out to me the most in this reading, or what I enjoyed, I should say, the most about this reading was Húrin finally escaping,
or being let go,
and then leading, first being accused of being a spy for Morgoth because he was with Morgoth for so long, but then essentially being a spy without being a spy because he led, Morgoth's minions to basically the neighborhood of where Thingol was, so that they knew where he was. And I just liked that whole portion of it. I really liked how he gave what's Noglamir? Is that what it's called? The necklace?
Very nicely done.
And he said, what did he say? I got it here.
He casts it at the feet.
Yeah, he throws it at Thingol's feet, and he says, "For now my fate is fulfilled, and the purpose of Morgoth achieved, but I am his thrall no longer."
Oh, so that's the second part of it. That's actually
right.
So at first he throws it at Thingol, it kind of in a sarcastic way almost, is like, "Hey, here's your fee,
right,
jackass," and then and then it's explained to him what actually took place. Like I think it's Melian who tells him, "Look, yeah, you have some of the facts, but you have a lot of lies as well. Here's what Morgoth told you. Here's what actually happened." And it's
we did take care of your family, but they left, and had they come back, we'd continue to take care of them. But it's not our fault that they didn't come back.
And I love that passage because it's actually really well drawn, in that you can see Húrin's hesitation when he said, he's just delivered this scathing rebuke, and then is himself rebuked, and he's chastened. And he pauses. He stops for a moment. You can kind of see the wheels turning in his head. What do I do? I've just been put in my place. Everything I thought I knew was a lie or a distortion of some kind. And he kind of just, you can almost see him, sigh, and his shoulders sag, and he goes, "You know what? You're right. I'm sorry. That was uncalled for." And he picks the necklace back up. And instead, he'd thrown it at Thingol. He picks it back up and hands it to him, and thanks him for what he did for his family. It's a really, really nice moment, and makes him an even cooler character than he already was.
And I really liked the part, your point earlier about Morgoth's been locked away at the end of all of this, but his influence remains. It will never go away. And I think that sums it up. I don't know that this was the purpose of it, but when he says, "And the purpose of Morgoth has been achieved," I think that that's the innocence that has been taken away way, way, way at the first of this, when Morgoth or Melkor introduces essentially discord. That is the purpose of it, and it will never
join our server.
Yeah, there you go. It's impossible to remove at this point, like you said. So that's been his purpose all along, is to plant that seed of discontent and evil and whatever.
Yeah.
We rename our server to be the Seed of Melkor.
Oh, dude, that would be immediately made inappropriate
Yes.
in ways I'd rather not. But at first glance, it was a good idea. The Seed of Melkor. Nicely done. Okay, wait, what was I? Oh yeah. Okay, so let's get into some listener questions or comments here. This one from Húrin fan. Okay, so now we're there. We know why Húrin fan calls himself Húrin fan, because Húrin is somebody you can definitely be a fan of. But the question from Húrin fan is, who had it worse, Húrin or his son? Now that we've had both stories come to completion, who had it worse? That is a tough question, honestly.
Say, is it worse to be imprisoned in hell essentially, and then come back from that and have everybody you care about gone, or is it worse for Túrin, who was basically going through life killing people accidentally?
Ryan, you look like you've got a thought before I go.
I was going to steal the quote from King Theoden: "No parent should outlive their child."
No parent should outlive their child. Yeah.
So I think for everything that Húrin had to go through to come out with the lies that he was told.
Oh, no parent should have to bury his child. I think that's what he says in the movie. Yeah.
But to come out from all of that and to go and, based on the information you have, try and, claim your retribution. Not retribution. He's not like out for revenge or anything, but
restitution. Maybe.
Yeah. And to realize that that's been all wrong, everything. And then to just kind of basically die of depression. Like, I think Húrin had it worse.
Yeah.
I do.
I think I would probably disagree. I think Túrin might have had it worse in that when his life ended, his life ended without honor. He had forfeit his honor many times over, and was so overcome by that he commits suicide, the ultimate act of dishonor, in some ways and in some situations. And so I think, I guess Húrin kind of Darth Vader's it in a way. Okay, he's not a bad guy who repents, but he's been in Morgoth's care, shall we say, and so he's been miserable for decades now. But when he's done, he does get to reunite with his wife, however briefly, and he does get to reconcile with Thingol. And he does avenge his son with Mim the dwarf.
Yeah.
So there are moments at the end where I am not saying that made what he went through worth it. And I am not saying he had it easy. But in whose shoes would I rather have my life end? I'll take Húrin every time.
See that?
Maybe, and I could be convinced otherwise. I'm not... But as I'm thinking about it right now, yeah, Túrin's path was pretty rocky.
Húrin's legacy also, isn't he recognized by the elves as like the mightiest warrior man?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I don't know that Túrin is there too, but like not the same.
Yeah, it's
not in the same. He's not revered the same way.
It's Barry Bonds with the home run record. There's always going to be an asterisk there for Túrin, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you might be one of the greats, but we're never going to take that asterisk off your name. I don't know, something like that, or some other metaphor that has to do with fantasy literature that people will care about. I don't know, whatever. I love baseball. Okay, back off. All right, should we do another listener question, or did you guys have more thoughts on that?
Mm-mm.
All right, so Leviathan asks, could Eärendil be considered the main character of the Silmarillion? Much of this book is spent building toward his birth and eventual voyage to Valinor, and we know Tolkien intended to expand the lay of Eärendil into a full-length story comparable to Beren and Luthien and the Children of Húrin. So is he, or could he be considered the main character of the Silmarillion?
one hell of a prologue if he's the main character.
Yeah.
And a very short story.
Yeah. I get what you're aiming at here, and I could see it if there was more of the story of Eärendil for us told. Like, then I would probably agree with it more. But as it stands, no, definitely a major. Like, there is a major drive to that. This is the first time I connected also the start of Eärendil to this story and its later use and stuff. I was like, oh, okay. That's cool. I didn't. Yeah, it's cool connection.
Yeah.
But.
No, I don't think so either. I think the only two characters who I think you could make some kind of case for being the main character of the Silmarillion, if such a thing were to exist, would be Fëanor or Morgoth.
Yeah.
That's and even then, Morgoth, he becomes much more like we know Sauron in The Lord of the Rings. He's this kind of presence off in the distant evil land, and he's he's kind of the puppet master directing things. But he becomes less and less of a presence as the book goes on, and Fëanor, of course, dies fairly early, right? Well, okay, Ryan, I just spit all over you, but that's okay. I've decided that's okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, all right,
We're good.
Anyway, so yeah, no, I don't think so, but I think it's a question worth asking, but it's also answered fairly easily.
This is also a storyline where I could almost argue that we don't have much by way of main characters, like you're saying, but we do have main elements of character that, like, for example, you said Fëanor could be one, but the oath of Fëanor's and his sons, like to always bring to the Silmarils, the doom of Mandos, like some of those things that are recurrent through most of the storyline. I almost feel like some of those things are more of a main element than most of our characters are. The fact that this is going to be, we get to the end here and we have the third kinslaying, which is kind of the fulfillment of.
Oh my gosh!
Stuff.
Yeah.
Like okay, no, that's been a long time in the process here, and we've been reading more about the fulfillment of that than necessarily any one individual character's story arc.
Somebody had some questions about that, and I'm going through here trying to find it. Jesse L says, I have sympathy for the sons of Fëanor trying to fulfill their oath. They swore it in anger and at the bidding of their father to the very real gods. If they did not fulfill their oath, their souls would be doomed to the everlasting darkness, or so they swore. That final kinslaying that you're referencing, where the two remaining sons of Fëanor gather their armies and attack the shipyards, whatever, whatever city, I can't remember the name of the city on the coast. And it's devastating in part because neither of them really wants to do this.
They try to get away. They try to not do it at the beginning by saying, "Hey, can you just please give it to us so we don't have to come kill you?"
Right, and Maglor is saying to Maedhros, "Look, there's all these other ways that we could go about this." Or I guess, sorry, that's a little bit later on, but we're getting there. They're over it. They're both over the oath at this point, but they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. They swore the oath. They have to go after the oath. So I guess my brain was fast forwarding to the moment when the Vanyar have come and conquered Morgoth, and Eonwe, the herald of the Valar, has the Silmarils in his keeping. Yeah. He's going to take them across the ocean, and Maglor is like, let's just go with them.
Yeah,
maybe they'll forgive us, and eventually we can have the Silmarils, without bloodshed. And Maedhros is like, that sounds nice, but I don't think that's going to happen. And our oath would compel us then to try to steal them, and that would be impossible in Valinor. Anyway, so it's just that devastating turn where they're stuck by their oath. They feel like they have no choice. I don't know.
You need a good oath lawyer that can find the loopholes in it. Like, look, you don't have to kill anyone, but you have to go try and get it. So, hold a flag football tournament or something, and the winner gets to keep the Silmarils.
Nice. Okay, so let's go on to another one. I spent so long trying to find that last one that I lost the one I wanted to. Oh, okay. Thingol's death. Speaking of the Silmarils, okay, this is going to tie together, but this one is from D, formerly the artist formerly known as Deephold. Did Thingol's death feel a bit shocking? Killed by dwarves after all he has been through. Death in battle against a dragon as the girdle fell seemed like more of the kind of end to expect for him. So I'll take this one first and then you guys can respond. I think, again, in a normal novel, yes, that is what we would expect. That is what we would hope to see. That would be the exciting thing to see for Thingol. But this is not a normal book. And Tolkien has some points that he's trying to make. And I think one of those is around, there are two core themes that I'm noticing, and we've talked about them in previous episodes, so apologize if I am repeating myself too much here, but pride and lust. Thingol exhibits both in great measure. Pride at first, right? He's obviously a very, very prideful king. We see that. We've been frustrated by it in stories past in this read through. But also, once he gets his hands on a Silmaril, just like many others before and after, he becomes quite the lusty dude. And he covets, or he becomes very jealous of this thing that he possesses. And I think part of what Tolkien is trying to say is, if you give in to that, if you, whatever your Silmaril is, I'm again, this is not this is not an allegory. We're not going for a 1-to-1, but it is applicable. And whatever your, quote unquote Silmaril is, if you have it in your possession, what is it going to do to you?
Mm-hmm.
Or what is chasing after it going to do to you? That sort of thing. So now he has it in his possession and he becomes very jealous of it. And because of that, he no longer gets the glorious ending in battle. He no longer gets that kind of awesome story ending that we might want for somebody of his stature in a story like this. He gives in to his jealousy and dies an ignominious death to a bunch of dwarves over kind of like an argument in the basement. I want it. No, I want it. Hey, I deserve it. No, you're trying to steal it. No, you're trying to steal it. Stab, stab. You're dead. We're out of here. Mm-hmm. Very, very strange ending. But I think that's the best I can come up with for why it went that way.
It makes sense entirely, other than a handful of other things where it's just like, oh, no, we're going to do this entirely different. We're just going to go ahead and write a quick ending to this person.
Yeah.
I also think that it speaks to your point about your stature doesn't matter necessarily. Like, it didn't matter that he was Thingol, king of the elves, and was he the one that married the?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's the
Maya?
only one that married a Maya, and he's like the highest of the high, right? And even in that grandeur, he's susceptible to your point, pride and greed and lust and all of that. But at the same time, that puts him in a position that something so relatively insignificant could be his doom. So,
right.
I like that.
All right. So let's move on to Mark Quillen, who sent in a bunch of lengthy questions. But I like this one a lot. Do you feel, speaking of Melian, do you feel like Melian let her people down by quietly disappearing back west without a word, dropping her girdle? What a great phrase. Dropping her girdle. Or was it that maybe the girdle was sustained by her love for Thingol and Luthien, so she had no will left in that matter? Perhaps, as she foresaw the end approaching, she reckoned her kingdom couldn't stay sheltered forever anyway. Even so, she might have stayed, because that ended kind of bad for her grandson and great-grandkids. This is a tough question. Okay, so if we go back, do you feel like she let her people down by going quietly, disappearing into the west? So after Thingol dies, and Doriath is kind of ransacked.
Mm-hmm.
She's just like, you know what? Yeah, I'm out of here. Yeah, let's peace out.
What would staying have done for them. Like,
Yeah, there's probably an argument that could be made that because she is a Maya, she would have the power, the magic or whatever we want to call it. She would have the power to turn the tide in this or that battle, maintain the girdle, whatever. There's an argument maybe to be made there.
But I think Ryan's question still, like, to what end? Let's say the tide turned for this. What does that do in the grand scheme? Does it change the outcome?
Yeah.
So I don't know if it really necessarily lets her people down. I mean, I guess the question is, do you want to ask her to fight until the last drop is spilt type
Right.
thing? And it doesn't really, I don't know, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to someone who's a Maya in my mind.
Right. It's kind of, maybe it's a kind of thing where it's like, look, I don't actually care that much about you people. I loved this guy and I loved my daughter, kind of, like Mark Willen was saying. I loved this guy and he's gone. I'm going to go back and be with my people now.
Yeah.
You had me for hundreds of years, thousands of years, maintaining this kingdom and protecting you, and you're on your own now. I don't know. I don't feel like she never, as far as I know, swore any oaths to maintain Doriath. So it's not like a Sons of Fëanor situation. Could she even swear such an oath as a Maya? I don't know. But yeah, she did it for thousands of years. They made choices. She made choices, and got to move on. I guess I don't feel that ill-disposed toward her, is what it comes down to. All right, so let's do another Húrin fan. Let's do a lighter one here from Húrin fan, who asks, of all the cities of the elves, which would you most like to live in? So we've got the big ones. We've been talking about in Doriath, that's the forest. We've got Menegroth, the 1,000 caves. That's where Thingol and Melian live. We've got the hidden city of Gondolin. We've got Nargothrond. We've got the I can't remember, the harbor town where Círdan lives. Those are probably the ones we get to know the most.
I was like, yeah, at what point in time are we talking about? Like specifically here at the end? Because they're all getting raised, so I'm not really like.
What are the gas prices like in Doriath? Like, kind of depends regionally.
Yeah, how's the commuter service?
Exactly.
I'm not a live in caves person, so that's out.
I've got mine, but
maybe Gondolin. I don't know.
Oh yeah, Gondolin would. The problem is with Gondolin that Turgon, he succumbs to pride as well in the end, and essentially condemns his entire people to death. A few of them escape, but very, very few, because he closes off the entire city. You shall not pass, and caves in the passage, and is like, yeah, you're staying here. And so if I lived in Gondolin, yeah, sounds great, right up until right. No, if I had to choose one, it might be, and forgive me, I can't actually remember the name of it at this point, but the island where Beren and Luthien head to. I don't know if they live alone, but I know that they live among the green elves of Osiriand in the southernmost river that feeds into Gelion. And the reason I mention that is because there is a passage where after the Nauglamir is taken, I guess. Stolen is a loaded word. It's taken by the dwarves, and they're trying to take it home. Beren gets a bunch of people together, and they go and kill the dwarves and take the necklace with the Silmaril, and Luthien wears it on that island, and it becomes this lovely place. Never in Middle Earth had such pure light been seen, or whatever. I can't remember the lines, but
Tol Galen.
Yeah, there you go. And so it sounds like for a little while at least, after the story of Beren and Luthien, while they're there, while they live there, it sounds like a lovely place. And in part because that's where the green elves live, and they just kind of seem like, for the most part, they're chilling. They're like, hey, look, you guys are doing your anti-Morgoth thing, and it's not working out well for you. We're just gonna stay over here, and please don't invade our lands, or we will shoot you with leaf-shaped bows, or whatever. I don't know. It seems a little more peaceful than the rest of Beleriand. So there you go. Kyle, any thoughts?
I'd just close my eyes and point at the map. Probably Nargothrond, because it sounds sweet.
That would be pretty cool. If you're gonna point your eyes, if you're gonna close your eyes and point at the map, you're gonna accidentally point at Angband and really, really regret your choices. So, all right.
How's the weather on Kira Thingol?
Party in the city when the heat is on.
Oh boy, that was nice. Okay. Mark Quillen says it's interesting how the best of Fëanor's sons survived to the end, but even they goad themselves into attacking the last elvish refugees. Pretty evil. Do you think Maedhros getting his right hand cut off was in some way a warning against laying it on the Silmaril, as he does in the end? His rescue by Fingon brought out his best qualities, yet they always wrestled against that damnable oath, which won out in the end. Were he and Maglor really in a catch-22 as they reasoned, or could Eru, on whom they swore the oath, release them if they would just release themselves? As it is, I kind of love their end. Tragic, but not unjust. So yeah, we're getting back to, this takes us back to Maedhros and Maglor, and so I don't know if we need to retread that ground all the way, but...
I think we covered it fairly well, but I do think he makes a mention in there of something that would have been interesting to see play out, is trying to undo the oath. Like, instead of just breaking the oath, the idea of going to the gods and saying, look, this is a bad idea, and if we're going to have to go kill a bunch of people and you're not going to be happy with it, we're not going to be happy with it. No one's going to be happy with this. Any way you can let us out of this so that people don't have to die, I'd be interested to see that, that would truly, it would clear up the whether or not if they were really in a catch-22. If the god's like, nope, sorry, can't undo that. Okay, yeah, then I guess we're screwed. But.
And it's a tougher situation than that, because they can't go ask. The only possible communication they could have with Eru would be through Manwë in Valinor, that they're forbidden from going back to. So they cannot go there. They're shut out. They're now exiles. And so I think it's an interesting idea. Could Eru, on whom they swore the oath, says Mark Quillen, release them if they would just release themselves? It would be a noble gamble, but a big gamble, right? So yeah, I don't know if they could. I
putting your own soul on the line by making the right choice and hoping that it pays off when you get to the other side.
Right. But and at that point, I mean, the right choice would be not to swear the freaking oath to begin with, right? Yeah. But that's in hindsight. So then does the right choice become stick with your oath or break it? It's a tough situation. It really is. And that's why I like their end in the story so much. It's very, very poignant to me. Okay. Let's go to... Oh, you know what? We got another question from Elliot.
Yeah.
Our young listener. So this one from Elliot. At the end of Tuor and the Fall of Gondolin, it said there were many songs and poems written about Tuor and not his wife, even though she gave birth to, quote, the most beautiful man ever, referring to Eärendil. So what do we make of this? At the end of Tuor and the Fall of Gondolin, it said there were many songs and poems written about Tuor and not his wife, even though she was awesome too. I don't know. Not much to make of that other than the damn elvish patriarchy. I don't know. Who knows?
I guess, I don't know.
The
power couples, hot people may...
I will say, no, I'm being flippant, or I was being flippant before, because Tolkien does go to some pains to mention when great deeds are done by women in his stories. There's criticism to be made from a modern perspective that he didn't give the women in his stories enough of those, and that's fine. But we do have interesting female characters. I just don't know that she is among them.
Mm-hmm.
She has a pivotal role, but that role is, wife of, mother of, and so I don't know that there's much to be sung about her except in reference to her relations. I don't know. It's a little cold to say it that way, but she's not that interesting, I don't think.
Maybe her songs just sucked. No one remembers.
Maybe
she was writing the poems and she didn't want to write them about herself.
That's right. She was too humble.
There you go.
To do it.
Way to go, Kyle.
Yeah,
I got you.
You saved her. No, I mean, I might be shortchanging her. Maybe if I go back and read it, I would be, I would have a different opinion of her role in the story. Speaking of which, I want to bring this up again. I believe I brought this to your guys' attention a while ago. Do you remember this? For those listening, I am holding up the Tolkien's World from A to Z, the complete guide to Middle Earth. This one's like 20 plus years old now. It's the Robert Foster one. I can't recommend this or something like it because there's a half dozen or a dozen of them out there now. I can't recommend them highly enough. You can go online and just go to tolkiengateway.net and get a lot of the same information. And in some ways, that's even nicer because there's hyperlinks and you could really quickly disappear down rabbit holes. But I call me old fashioned. I love the hard copy. It reminds me of when I was reading The Lord of the Rings in French, and so I had two books, one book and one dictionary open at all times right in front of me. These books, it's like an encyclopedia, an A to Z encyclopedia. These are really, really useful so that when you come to questions like this, Elliot's question was, why is Tuor's wife, what's her name? Tuor, and was it Elwing? No, dang it, that's whatever. My brain is so scattered. But with his wife, you just find her name and it will tell you all of the details of her story, and kind of pull them all the details from the various chapters that she's in. And so her relationship, with this elf and that man and the jealousy here and the things that were said there. And you can do that with a lot of characters and events where I remember there were a couple of times in these chapters where there would be a reference to the thing that this character said to that character 8 chapters ago, and so 350 years ago or whatever it was, and therefore Thingol wouldn't give up the Naglamir, whatever. And you're sitting there going, well, wait, what? Who said what to, hang on. And you're never going to find it. That's why the rereads are so valuable, but that's also why these encyclopedia volumes are so valuable, because you can kind of find that stuff. You find out who said, it says this person said a thing to Thingol. So you go look up that person's entry and it'll probably have something about that. It's not going to flesh out the whole thing, but okay, so you swore an oath to Thingol that this and that and the other, and then you don't have to go hunt through 8 different chapters to try to find it, right? So, it's a little late now that we're finishing up the Quenta Silmarillion, but a nice reminder to even seasoned readers. I'm sitting here trying to remember the name of Tuor's wife. It's embarrassing, but whatever. My brain is shutting off for the day. It's valuable whether it's your first time going through it or your 20th time going through it. I really, really like these. Okay, guys. So we've been going for, a little over 50 minutes now. Let's see if I know we've got some more questions to go through. Let me see if I can find a couple. Padre Philippe asks, it's been a while since I read Lord of the Rings, but I think that at least Eärendil is mentioned in there, like in Galadriel's gift to Frodo. Are there more interesting connections between this final part of the Silmarillion and the Lord of the Rings? Did you guys catch any by chance? Ryan, you said that
the
kind of...
Star of Eärendil, Elrond, the name Elrond.
Mm-hmm.
But those were the only real major connections I made.
Right. Let's see. We've got...
Didn't we have Glorfindel falling down with a Balrog at some point?
Yeah, that was...
Right, that's another person's question, or I can't remember who asked the question. Is that the same Glorfindel?
I don't know, but it was definitely evocative and reminded me of obviously the Gandalf thing.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. No, you're taking it in a direction I wasn't expecting. But yeah, that's a great callback to Lord of the Rings. No, Glorfindel is the name of the elf who he's a lord, an elven lord in Rivendell, and he is the one who carries Frodo on horseback after he gets stabbed on Weathertop. So in the movie, it's Arwen. They give it to Arwen. But in the book, it's Glorfindel who picks him up and takes him across the ford of Bruinen. And so the question is that the same Glorfindel? I don't think so. I believe our first Glorfindel dies in the Fall of Gondolin. But I guess if we're going by comic book rules, there we didn't see brain matter. So
no one's ever really gone.
No one's ever really gone.
But yeah, what stood out for me with that was just the imagery of Gandalf and the Balrog, and then this instance of it. I was like, oh, maybe this was a practice round.
Idril, by the way, is her name.
Idril. Oh, thank you. Gosh, this is, again, embarrassing, but it happens. Whatever. I'm not going to beat myself up.
1 in 4 Silmarillion readers.
Wait, that's right. That's 1 in 5 readers can't remember Idril's name. It happens to every guy. Okay. Oh, I almost dropped my phone here. The big connection, I think, in this section is Eärendil, at the Star of Eärendil, knowing who that is. And so when Frodo gets the file from Galadriel, in which she has imprisoned or captured the light of Eärendil, our most beloved star, that's what that is. It's so Frodo is carrying into Mordor a file containing the light of a jewel that contained the light of Valinor, the trees, the 2 trees in Valinor. So it's it's a descendant in some ways of those trees and that pure unsullied light. And so
in some
when
ways
you
connected
get
to
that,
the Silmarils, then
what's that?
In some ways connected to the Silmarils.
Exactly. Yeah. It literally is the light of the Silmarils, just distilled over a great distance, right? Yeah. Of time and space, right? So it's the kind of detail where if you're reading The Lord of the Rings, do you need to know that? No. What you need to know is that Frodo got this thing from Galadriel and it helped him when he needed it. And, her presence was a comfort, and a shield. But when you know that detail, oh, wow. So hang on. The history, the lineage of this thing that Frodo is holding on to and that Sam uses in his battle with Shelob, that the lineage goes all the way back to the Elder Days with the trees. And that's pretty cool stuff. I like that. Yeah, Kyle, I think I interrupted you twice.
No, you're good. I think it just, like you said, it really lends gravity to the moment. Or even just the act of Galadriel giving that to Frodo and saying either that, she says it's their most beloved star, but the fact that we see,
I believe that's a movie line, by the way.
Sure, but
it's a fine movie line though.
The fact that we see that happen and we know how much bloodshed, turmoil, everything has gone into tracking down Silmarils and what they are, and it just, to me, it's like I didn't make the connection until you were just talking about it, but to me it's either that Galadriel believes so much in the cause that she would hand that over, or cares that much about Frodo that she would hand that over.
It's one of the
which
few
is
things,
interesting.
Yeah, the realization that it's probably one of the few things that actually has the power on its own to hold back and fight the darkness of Sauron in this case, but of Morgoth, because it's still it's through Morgoth to Sauron and out.
Right.
But the fact that it has that much power, this isn't something that she's got, 5 or 6 files sitting back at her dresser,
she pulls them off her belt like grenades. Here, why don't you take this one?
Light of Eärendil, go! But no, so it's just how big of a treasure it is, and how big of a treasure it would be for so long because of its history, and that connection is huge.
And if you don't have that, this is like dumbing it way down, but she's handing out all these things, and it's like, oh, it's a flashlight. You've given me a flashlight. You know what I mean? Thanks.
Yeah.
But like, it's so obviously so much more than that, and you get all that history and understanding, and it's like, oh dang, she just handed him literally like the most precious thing to her people that there is.
Right. And it also it gives you a little context of Frodo's prayer to Eärendil. And I had to type it up because I don't remember this Elvish phrase off the top of my head, but you remember when he pulls out the file, and he says something in Elvish, and Tolkien, a-hole, doesn't even translate it for us. I mean, he did in a letter later, but in the text you have no idea what he's saying. Mm-hmm. But he says, Eärendil elenion ankalima, and then he just goes on like this. It's this incantation as he holds up the file of Galadriel.
It was Kalima.
Kalima. So when he does that, you may not know what the actual words are or what the translation would be, but knowing that he's invoking Eärendil in some way, it lends, again, more depth and weight to it. So yeah, good stuff.
Thanks for the light, Eärendil.
Now I'm just going off of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Mount Doom.
So the translation that he gave was "Hail Eärendil, brightest of stars." That's all. It's simply an invocation. So, all right, guys, we should probably start wrapping this up. We're closing in on our hour mark. Do you have anything else that you want to close out with on this section, Ryan?
I just had question heading in because I think if I remember right, we've done Akallabêth before.
Yes, we have. One of my favorites.
But I don't recall a whole lot. This is the end of the Quenta Silmarillion. We're moving into Akallabêth at this point. What should we be expecting to be different? We've already said it's a little bit of it. It's like there is a continuation to it, but why is this the end of the Quenta Silmarillion?
Right.
But Akallabêth is still there. So
yeah, the Quenta Silmarillion is the essentially the account of the Silmarils,
and they've gone.
And that story is like we've just been talking about for the last 5 minutes. No one's ever really gone, right? Yeah. No story is ever really over, but for all intents and purposes, the story of those jewels is done. So we kind of end with Maedhros and Maglor. Maedhros casts himself into the earth, and Maglor tosses his into the ocean, and then wanders the beaches for the rest of eternity. Like, I actually really like his ending. It's really good. Anyway, but yeah, it's over. So now, as we move into Akallabêth, and Ryan, Kyle, I can't remember who said it earlier, that this is it. It feels like we've had the rise and fall of the Noldor in Middle Earth, right? They're not gone. I mean, we still have Galadriel and her folk, and a few others, but the story of the Noldor has kind of risen and fallen, and now we're going to shift into the age of men. And so this is the story of the second age. So we've been in the first age, and it has now ended with the chaining of Melkor. That ends the first age, and now we're going into the second age, and that's going to be essentially the story of Numenor. Numenor being the island nation that is these are the forebears of Aragorn, the people gifted with long life. And the story is going to be instantly familiar to anybody who's gone to any Sunday school class in any denomination, because it's essentially the Pride cycle in 35 pages or whatever it is. It's not a terribly long section, but you see. Similarly, you see a people who are gifted amazing things by the gods and by God himself. They're gifted long life. They're gifted this island nation. They build up into this amazingly powerful force, and then become so prideful that they fall into ruin. And I mean ruin. It's really spectacular. So that's what we're going to get into, and this is even more than the Quenta Silmarillion. Akallabêth is really a distillation of a ton of history into a few pages. So you're not going to get a lot of like, here's your protagonist. You'll get a little bit of that at the very end, but mostly it's kind of an accounting of an entire people and how they rose and fell. So it is possibly, this kind of shifts, every time I read it, but most consistently, this is my favorite section of the entire book. I love Akallabêth. I think it's fascinating and really, really well drawn. So, Kyle, any last final thoughts, questions, comments? I'm the
noob, so I'm just here to tag along and enjoy the ride. But it's been cool so far, and like I said, or like Ryan said, I'm interested in how this will be different now that the Silmarils are done.
The MacGuffin has left the building.
The MacGuffin, we put it on a necklace. It looked really nice, and so I guess my other question, maybe we answered this before, but maybe we didn't. Is the Arkenstone a Silmaril, or is it not?
No, it is not a Silmaril.
Cool.
No. It's a good thought, but no, not a Silmaril. Just a dope rock.
I like dope rocks.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. You can tell we're fading fast. My energy levels
ending on dope rocks.
Yeah, so. Exactly. We got to quit while we're way, way, way behind. Yeah. So thanks for listening. Go to thelegendarium.com. Come back in a couple weeks for Akallabêth. I'm gonna go on and redo our schedule for the last 2 episodes because I'm sure we're supposed to be publishing the last episode when this one comes out. I'll go retool that, so you can check that out. Anyway, Ryan, Kyle, thanks for coming. I will talk to you guys in a couple weeks.